we will talk about the development and the codification of religious and cultural traditions in the classical period. When we're dealing with this subject, we want to remember, and this is the one that the College Board deals with first for the AP exam. Will anyone take a stab why the College Board chooses to talk about the development of maybe religious and cultural traditions prior to talking about like the establishment of states? Do you think there's a reason for the ordering that they're choosing here? Yes, ma'am.
Like to understand like, or like where they got the like basis from, to understand the foundation.
Okay, maybe the states are basing their development on the religion that already exists for the people. Sure. Yes, ma'am. Some places are literally going to be theocratic states. We've all heard that word before, where the religion that has already been established will be dictating the rules of the state that comes. Okay, there's probably no greater unifier in history than and like bringing people together than the religions that people practice. Yes, Tyler.
Because when we have a religion that is already set up, the concept that a king is divinely appointed by God is used to
Absolutely.
for an excuse but for reasoning for somebody to open up an empire. Or something.
Very good. So when we're dealing with what's coming first, the chicken or the egg, sometimes the chicken is going to say that the egg wants the chicken to be there. What? Okay, I just made the very smart thing that he said sound very confusing. The religion is already established. So later kings are going to say that the God of the religion we've already established wants me to rule you and has allowed me and my family to be in this position. So you listen to me, or you will not only have problems with me and my military, but you could also have problems with our God. All right, so very good. So we got to talk about the religion before we talk about the development of states. We're going to talk about another number of religious and cultural traditions. We're going to start with two: Judaism and the Vedic religions of India, because those are two that predate the classical period. Okay, their origins come before the classical period. Judaism, born in the Middle East. Dates back possibly over 4,000 years ago to a man named Abraham. Abraham is a name we're going to hear in the Jewish faith, the Christian faith, and the Islamic faith as that first prophet of God. Abraham was born in ancient Babylonia. He was born in a community of polytheistic believers, where there were a number of gods dictating people's lives or that people would have worshipped. And according to the Jewish and the Christian and the Islamic tradition, Abraham was told by God that there is only one God. And from there, Abraham will eventually move to the west, to the coast of the Mediterranean, and the children that he has and the people he connects with will become the Hebrew people. And this is going to be over many centuries. All right? So the establishment of Judaism is born 1,500 years or more before we get to our classical period here. Now, the Jewish people are going to go through some difficult times, but one very important one that we all need to take note of is the Babylonian captivity. In the 6th century BCE, the Hebrew people are going to be taken captive by a group called the Neo-Babylonians, or the Chaldeans. All right? And the leaders, the political leaders, the religious elite within the Hebrew community are going to be taken to the city of Babylon and imprisoned. And while there, much of the Hebrew scriptures will be written down and become supreme within the faith. The Hebrew people were essentially removed from their homeland in Jerusalem, where their temple was in Jerusalem, and their religion had to become portable. All right? So once they're separated from their temple, and the temple is literally destroyed by the Babylonians, once their temple is gone, the religion, because of the book now that becomes the most important aspect, the religion becomes portable, and that's going to be important as the story goes on. In 539, the Persians will conquer the Neo-Babylonians. King Cyrus the Great, Persian King Cyrus the Great, allows the Jews to return to Jerusalem. They do return. They're allowed to reestablish their temple. They're allowed to practice their faith, to continue to practice their faith, because all Cyrus cares about as the Persian king is keeping the peace and collecting the taxes. So he's going to let local people practice their own local religions. So Judaism now continues, but the temple isn't supreme anymore. Okay? Now it's the book. It's the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. It's the Bible, which is a Greek word for book. Unfortunately, the Jews don't live in great times for long. By the 1st century BCE, the Romans are going to conquer. The Jewish kingdom. The Jews will live within the Roman times, under much of the same rules that they were living in under previous Persian rulers. Keep the peace and pay your taxes, and everything will be fine. But by the year 70 CE, the Romans had dealt with a number of Jewish uprisings and riots and protests that the Romans had enough. They went into Jerusalem. They destroyed the rebuilt temple that was rebuilt after the Persians allowed the Jews to go back to Jerusalem. They destroyed this second temple. And now that this is why this is an artist's rendering of what it would have looked like, because it is gone now. They destroyed the second temple, and they ushered in a period in history known as the Diaspora. The Diaspora, it comes from a Greek word meaning scattering or spreading out. It's when the Jews of Palestine, the Jews of the Roman province of Palestine, are getting out of Palestine. Many are going to go deeper into the Middle East, like maybe in Saudi Arabia, or east into present-day Iraq. Some are going to go into North Africa. Some will head north into Europe, most of which would be today like Russia and Poland. The Jews will scatter throughout the world. So the diaspora is a scattering. We will hear that word again much later in the year when we talk about African slaves being taken from West Africa to the New World. That's referred to as a diaspora as well, or a diasporic event as well. All right? But we've got the establishment of Judaism. We've got the Jews going through some pretty serious hard times. But because now the religion is connected to a book ever since that Babylonian captivity, regardless of where those Jews migrated to in the diaspora, they take the Torah with them. The Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. They take the scriptures with them. So now Judaism will spread throughout the world. All right? Or throughout the world that it's able to spread to. Primarily Middle East, North Africa, and Europe. Questions, comments on this? Yes, ma'am.
Was this forced or was that like voluntary?
Absolutely forced. Like, you stay and continue to practice your faith, you're going to be in trouble. So most got out. Yes, sir.
So when was Persia taken over by Rome again?
When was the Persians taken over by the Romans? There's a little bit more to the story that I've left out. In the 2nd century BCE, there was actually a Jewish uprising then against a Persian king who didn't allow the Jews to practice their faith the way they wanted. He wanted to be worshipped as a god king, quite different from the way Cyrus treated them back in the day. And so there was a Jewish revolt I mentioned the other day. This is where the story of Hanukkah comes from. It's called the Maccabean Revolt. This is beyond AP World, what we need to know. But there was a Jewish revolt against Persian rule, and the Jews would get their independence for a short time. So it was actually the Jews themselves that would drive later Persians out. But then within the 1st century BCE, the Roman Empire is expanding, and it will expand to take over that Jewish kingdom. So in the 1st century BCE, the Romans take over the Jewish kingdom in what the Romans will then call Palestine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And my other point was there were like pretty much two important events that happened like in this whole span of time. Like the Babylonian captivity made it so that Judaism was a portable religion that could go everywhere.
Absolutely.
And the diaspora are causing the spread.
I think brilliant that you do that. So if we want to sum up, literally thousands of years of Jewish history into 2 massively important events, especially important events for something like the AP exam, we're going to talk about the Babylonian captivity making the religion portable, and we're going to talk about the diaspora, spreading the religion to further areas. Yes, ma'am, and then we'll move on.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Before when the Jewish people had to kind of like spread around, it happened in multiple times because they were forced out of a lot of places. How do you differentiate between this diaspora and other?
Yeah, so why don't we call the Babylonian captivity a diaspora? That was much smaller. The Babylonians didn't take all of the Hebrew people into Babylon. That would have been maybe crazy and too much for Babylon to handle. But they took the political elite and leaders. In 70 CE marks the beginning of this squashing of the Second Temple and the event that's officially known as the Diaspora, because that's when everybody had to get out of town. Okay, so that is the major event. Excellent. Any other questions? Sweet. So now we turn ourselves to India. Now, those of you that did your reading, never mind. I put it right here. It's really easy. Okay, never mind. We'll talk more about Krishna and Arjuna, if not later today, certainly on Friday. We're going to go to the Vedic religions now in India, and VEDIC, in the Indian subcontinent. And we want to emphasize, with regard to the Vedic religions, how these religions are going to be such a tremendous impact on the social and the political lives of people in the Indian subcontinent. Like Judaism, Hinduism is not born in this classical period. Hinduism is going to be building upon centuries of traditions that had already existed by the time we get to the classical period. All right? So it is a long-lasting religion, much like Hinduism is.
So we're talking about which one now?
Hinduism. The Vedic religion, they're called the Vedic religions because some of the most important early scripts are called the Vedas, V-E-D-A-S. So we refer to them as the Vedic religions. Today, like, the Vedic religion is Hinduism.
What year was it?
No, I don't know. Old. Like, old, yeah. Like, there's no... again, when we're talking about, like, world history, where we're going back before, like, the classical period, certainly, when we're talking about, like, the first and the second, or, pardon me, the second millennium BCE, I don't know. We don't find anything. We don't find very much from those time periods. All right, so there is no date. So we're talking development in the second and third millennium all the way up until the classical period. So, old. I just leave it at that. Hinduism is seen as a polytheistic religion with many gods. And when I say many gods, we're like talking millions of gods. But all of those gods are aspects or incarnations of one supreme universal being. So there is some debate as to whether Hinduism is a polytheistic religion or is it a monotheistic religion. You could go either way as long as you defended your response. Okay.
So there are aspects of which person?
The Brahman.
Oh.
So there's this one universal entity called Brahman, of which there are hundreds of millions of gods, or hundreds of millions of manifestations of Brahman.
I actually thought that I kept being confused between Brahma and Brahman.
Yeah, that is confusing, isn't it? Brahma is one of the manifestations of... Yes, ma'am.
Oh, it's just a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
So Brahma and Krishna and Vishnu and Shiva, these are all manifestations of this one supreme entity. Yeah.
Okay, so is it like Christianity then, where God is separated into three different, like, there's
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really a connection there, but if you want to think of it like that, yes, there is one God in Christianity. And this was an issue in early Christianity, which we'll be able to talk about in a few minutes. Wait, is it one God, or is Jesus God as well? This is kind of confusing. And early Christians had to work this out for themselves as to what it really was and what was going to be the accepted belief for everybody.
But you also can't call Christianity a polytheistic religion.
People don't like that, no, because there's only one God, according to the Ten Commandments, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I have a two-part question. The first part is, you said that Judaism and Christianity and Islam,
Yep.
they're related.
Yes.
And if they're related but they're separate religions, then how are like
Protestants
and Lutheranism and all the denomination considered denomination within the same?
Yeah, and we will deal much more with this much later. Every single religion, like when you start getting a religion that's going to have over 10. If I were to tell you guys all that I was going to order pizza, but I would only order pizza if we could all agree as to what to put on it, we probably would never order pizza. Because people just have a hard time. If you get more than like 3 or 4 people together, you're going to have a hard time making everybody happy. So as these religions are going to grow, we're going to see various, what we call sects, S-E-C-T-S, sects of these religions forming. And every religion is going to have its branches, especially as it spreads and as it grows. So what I like to think of it, I use like an umbrella analogy. And so there is like a Christian umbrella, and there's a Muslim umbrella, and there's a Buddhist umbrella, and there's a Jewish umbrella. And the overarching beliefs of each umbrella are the same. And everything that falls under that and protected from the rain by that umbrella, they all believe in some basic core ideas. But then, within that, there might be some smaller umbrellas under the big umbrella. And they've got some slight differences with the other little umbrellas. All right? And sometimes even within the little umbrellas, there's even smaller umbrellas that have some slight differences within, like, for Roman Catholics, you guys could go to a handful of different Roman Catholic churches and get a different vibe out of them. Some are a little bit more conservative than others, okay? Some are a little bit more modern and less traditional than others. So there's a lot of varieties in all these faiths. With regard to the relationship between Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, this is very tricky. They all worship the same God, but so the word Allah, and we're going to talk about this much more later. The word Allah is just the Arabic word for God. Many Christians, probably too many Christians that don't understand the origins of Islam, would think that it's a completely different God. It's the same God, but Muslims are adding on to the Christian story. They're adding on to that God story that Christians don't accept. Much the same way that Christians have added on to the Jewish God story in ways that Jews don't accept. All right? So it's, you've got one common branch of the faith, of all of those 3 faiths, those 3 Abrahamic faiths, that starts with Judaism. But then in the 1st century of the Common Era, we get a new branch off of that stump, off of that tree stump. It's only a stump when you cut it down. What am I thinking? No, like the main trunk. Thank you. Words are hard. Now we have a branch off of that tree trunk, right? And then as that branch grows out, there's going to be another branch that will jut out of that trunk, near the trunk, but close to that other branch, because the Muslims accept Jesus as an important figure, as an important prophet, but not as the Son of God that died and was reborn. So we will deal with all this stuff much later, but I'm glad we are already having questions. So the important aspects of Hinduism that we need to get down. First, I mentioned it is seen by many as a polytheistic faith with millions, literally millions of incarnations of this one supreme deity. Do I have any Hindu students in here? At last count, what are you told? How many incarnations are there? Have you ever heard of such things? Because I've seen different things. I've seen a couple 100 million to 300 million.
Yeah, there's a lot, but there's like main ones that we like more are focused on.
Absolutely.
There's like one for light, one for knowledge, one for health.
One for your community, one for maybe even your home. Yeah, like there are so many. And what do you think, and I'm going to have you answer this question, what do you think that does to a society? What do you think having a religion with so many different deities that can be prayed to, what do you think that does for a society different from a society that might only have one supreme being?
For me personally, I like how it's like there's for everything there's a new God, so there's something that you're representing for something else, not as one whole.
Okay.
More as like one separate.
How does that make a society different, though, that there's so many different gods representing different things. How do you think that might change a society or make it different from a Christian society or a Jewish society or a Muslim society? Yes, ma'am?
I feel like there'd be less unity.
There'd probably be less unity. There'd be a lot more diversity in the community, right? In the society. Guess we're not here yet. We're not talking about state development yet. But when it comes down to the development of states, guess which state was going to be less unified overall? Would it be the Indian state? Would it be a Chinese state? Or would it be an eventual Christian or Muslim state? Which one do you think will see less unity? The Indian one. There's so much more variety, so much more nuance in that society, and so much less connection between all the people. Even if they share the same core belief, because there are so many different important deities, it leads to less unity in the society overall. Okay, we will deal much more with that. Did I have another hand up somewhere? Yeah, Hannah.
I was just thinking, since Hinduism seems like it can be applicable to everybody's life, maybe it would sort of bring them more together because they can understand why everyone is different. They seem open-minded.
I think I know. I like how you said open-minded, and we are going to talk this year about how the Eastern religions tend to be a little bit more open-minded than the religions developing out of the Abrahamic faith. When you have so much nuance and have so much variety, changes to the faith don't shake you to your core, right? They don't maybe cause as much chaos or riots or strife. So yeah, good thinking there. But it doesn't lead for a strongly unified state system. Yeah. Yes, ma'am?
Well, could you use like Greece as an example, like with Sparta and Athens, how they worship?
Sure, absolutely. And Greece is... look at you go. It's another society that follows multiple deities that had very little unification. Awesome. We will talk much more about Greece in, I guess, half an hour. So with regard to Hinduism, we're dealing with this idea of numerous gods representing different aspects of life. All forms of this universal spirit known as Brahman, B-R-A-H-M-A-N, manifested into millions of deities. But the most important aspect to Hinduism for us is how it shapes the lives of Hindu people. An individual has what's known as karma. All right, and you guys read about this without maybe the language. Has karma. All right, and we use this in our modern vernacular, right? When someone is said to have good karma, what does that mean?
They do good people.
Do good things happen, right? That one's karma is shaped by years and years and years, going even beyond their life, by the things that their entity has been through. All right? Yes, sir?
I think also in Buddhist, because I come from like background of it, I think it's also true for the Buddhist belief because we think about reincarnation,
yep.
And then we kind of have the thing where what you do in your previous reincarnation affects the karma that you're going to have after the next reincarnation, after you finish this life. And
absolutely. And why should it not surprise us that Tyler is bringing up a similarity between Buddhism and Hinduism? Yes.
They were not centered, but they started around the same area.
They started around the same area. In fact, the first Buddhist was previously a Hindu. Okay, Buddhism is a religion born in the Indian subcontinent. Yes, ma'am.
I kind of read about something that said that Buddhism believed in a lot of the same Hindu beliefs, except it changed it up a bit.
Absolutely, and we will talk about those changes in a couple minutes. So one's karma is shaped by how they've lived their lives over many lives, and that will dictate what caste an individual will be a part of. What caste an individual will be a part of. So India is one of a number of societies over history, but probably the most prominent that we will talk about this year, that has what's known as a caste society, which means everybody in that society has a certain role, all right? And that is your role for your lifetime. You don't leave your caste. When we talk about, America likes to pride itself on our social mobility, which may or may not be as mobile as it used to be. How you can start off poor in America and you can end up middle class, or you can start off poor and you can end up wealthy, or you can start off wealthy and destroy everything and end up poor. There's a lot of movement in our society, all right? We have presidents that have risen from the aristocracy. We've had presidents that have risen from the middle class. Most are rising from the aristocracy, but there's still that idea of an opportunity. In a caste system, there is no such movement. And India, because of its development of the Hindu faith, is going to be strictly observing this caste society. Really up until today, really up until the modern time. When the British were in charge of India, they started to try to move away from the traditional caste society. But this is going to be an aspect of Indian culture and society for a few thousand years. So the caste that you're born in is the caste that you're going to live in. You might be in a priestly caste. You might be in, which means you are going to be a priest, basically, a Brahmin. And you are going to lead the rituals of the faith. And your child will be in that caste. And your grandchild will be in that caste. And your great-grandchild will be in that caste. And all of those people will be in that caste because your wives are going to be in that caste. Everybody's coming from the same caste. There's no intermixing. You could be in a warrior caste. You could be in a ruler caste. You could be in a servant caste. All right? You could be in a laborer caste. Yes, sir?
So you can't even move down if you wanted to.
There is no movement. There is no... Now, you would move down possibly in the next life if you didn't do what you needed to do according to the rules of your caste in this life. Good luck to your next life, because you'll probably be in a lower caste.
Well, the same thing says for if you're like in the last life, if you're low on the caste, you move up.
Absolutely, you can. There is social mobility in the next life, yes, but you as an individual won't be there to experience it, but your soul will. Yes, ma'am.
Didn't they kind of use the coming of the next life as a justification of the caste?
Absolutely. And you guys read about that, and we're going to talk more about that. But, oh my goodness, who would want to be a servant in society? Who would want to be relegated to that? Who would want to know that not only are you going to be a servant, but your child is going to be living in the same poverty that you are? But if your faith tells you, you must do your duty. And what's the word we use for the duty that one must do? You guys read this. Your dharma. You must fulfill the obligations of your caste. You must fulfill the obligations in order to escape that caste in the next life. That can allow you to put up with some pretty lousy situations. All right?
So you must fulfill your role in the caste?
You must fulfill your role in the caste. You must fulfill your dharma. But let's we're gonna step on a couple toes here of things we're going to talk about later in the year. Why do you think Christianity, especially as some Christian missionaries are going to make their way to southern India and going to create future UAIS students with last names like Thomas and Joseph, George, no, not George, first name George, I guess. Why are we going to have Christianity be so appealing to a number of Indians in South India? Yes.
Well, Christianity, it doesn't have the rigid system that
What does Christianity say about the meek? No, not that they're evil. The meek shall...
Equal.
Oh, they're equal. Man, I thought you said evil. The meek shall inherit the earth, right? So the meek, the poor, the downtrodden, that's who will experience the kingdom of heaven, right? So Christianity is going to sell an idea to future followers that it doesn't matter where you are in your life, where you're coming from in your life. You have the same opportunity to enjoy the kingdom of heaven in the next life as anybody else, as the wealthy man. In fact, there's scripture in Christianity that talks about how it's easier for poorer people to enjoy the riches of heaven than it is for the wealthy. Same thing. When Islam makes its way into the Indian subcontinent, it's going to be appealing to a lot of Hindus, especially, do you think rich Hindus or poor Hindus?
Poor Hindus.
Poor Hindus, because they want something different. They want sooner hope, or they want possibly the chance that things could be better more quickly than Hinduism might offer them. Now, if you're rich and you're powerful, not a whole lot of reason to change. which makes it that much more interesting that Buddhism ever formed in the first place. But we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. We already mentioned that the varieties in the Hindu faith, those will lead to great variety within the Indian subcontinent and much less unified states within the Indian subcontinent. And we'll talk about that later. All right. Now on to the new religions born in the classical period, but most of these new religions that we're going to deal with are born in the classical period, but they do have some roots in these long traditional religions like Judaism and Hinduism. So this is Siddhartha Gautama. He is known as the original Buddha. He was a Hindu prince. So he was from an upper caste. He was living a pretty good life. But he didn't feel that Hinduism, as it was being practiced, was alleviating any of the world's suffering. So he didn't think it was the way to go. So upon some very harsh meditation, and we can see in this artist's depiction here. Yes, sir?
I think the art there is trying to depict, because in the book that some Buddhists read, like we call it like it's like a Bible but for
yeah.
We don't really have a name for it. It also depicts that he would have sat underneath a tree.
Yeah, the Bodhi tree.
Yeah, and then he would just not eat anything until he would like physically like die, and then but he would not die because the legends, as it says, like the lily pod just submerged underneath him and then just kind of like opened up, and then that's how the picture of was.
He achieved what Buddhists refer to as enlightenment. All right, the Buddha means enlightened one. So he got to a place. And he's a real guy. He really existed. He got to a place where he got beyond all human desires. All right, and that's where we're going to talk about the core of Buddhism. Yes, ma'am.
Did he just not like Hinduism?
So he's from this, and this is really interesting. Yeah, and this is probably why we could throw this guy down on the list of, wow, that probably is a pretty great man, a pretty tremendous individual in the course of history. He is a guy that he was a Hindu priest, prince. He was living the high life, right? And in fact, whenever you see him, notice, whenever you see like a statue or an image of Buddha, we see like these long earlobes. And now you guys will go to the DIA, or you'll go anywhere else and you'll see little Buddha statues, or you'll go to the Chinese restaurant and you'll see the little fat Buddha by the restaurant. But check out his ears. I know that's different. That's talk about the umbrella kind of thing. But you'll notice these big earrings. What do you think that's all about?
Royalty.
What's that?
Royalty.
Why? How does one's ears get like that? Yes.
Well, I know that the extension of the earlobes can be caused by jewelry.
Yeah.
And jewelry is a symbol of wealth.
Very good. Very good. So he's rich. He's got a lot of jewelry, right? We don't see it here, but because he's cast all that out. So he's probably got some fancy big earring jewel things going on up in his ears. Probably was tradition at the time for the priestly class to do such things, to wear such clothes, and to have such an identity. But upon his meditation under the Bodhi tree, he cast all that aside. All right? So Buddhism is going to teach that every individual, this is where it's going to branch from Hinduism, that every individual can achieve enlightenment. He's got a problem with this idea. All right? Why is it just that the upper castes are close to achieving this unity with the universal spirit? Everybody should have that opportunity, regardless of what caste you come from. So who do you think Buddhism will most appeal to in its earliest years?
Lower class.
The lower castes. Very good, yeah. You're like, wait a minute, whoa. You're saying I can, have the same thing that rich folks have, right now? Awesome. I love it. So Buddhism teaches that everybody can achieve this enlightenment. And the way they do it, yes, ma'am? Go ahead.
I was just going to ask that, how did they build up the caste system if they started from the poor people? If that idea started from the poor people, how did it...
No, the caste... Oh, okay. Yeah, good question. So we're going back to the chicken or the egg. In the beginning, in the very beginning, it didn't all start off with just laborers, and eventually some of them escaped into the next highest caste, and then some got in the next highest caste. In the beginning, there were leaders, and the leaders were the strong ones, the leaders were the ones with weapons, and the leaders were the ones that were letting people know that they were in the highest caste. And the leaders were the ones, along with the priests up in the high. Why? In the original Vedic religions, the priests were actually the highest caste. Eventually, it's going to be taken over by like the ruling caste, who will be seen as the highest one. The priests are the highest. Well, why do you think they get to be the highest? They're the ones spreading the idea. They're the ones convincing everybody to follow this. So in the beginning, there's got to be those high castes to kind of dictate and control. But especially that ruling caste that's going to have, and the warriors, their upper caste, well, they're the ones making everybody else toe the line, making everybody else follow the rules, right? So he breaks from this. And Buddhism at its core, according to this original Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, is based on this idea of the Four Noble Truths. Suffering happens because we always want more, right? I love my iPhone 6, but then Apple told me I needed to get an iPhone 6S, and I will never be satisfied, right? We all want more because we all want things better than what we have.
So it's like desire.
Yeah, and because we don't have what we want, we're sad. And I know you're all looking at this right now and you're being like, yeah, I get it. And this is kind of why I like learning about world cultures and world history, because I think it makes the world a lot more relatable, right? Are people in the Indian subcontinent 2,500 years ago, when this was originally being formulated, are they really that different from us today? No. They have different toys. They didn't have they probably had an Android or something back then. Absolute primitive squalor, right? All right, relax. The third noble truth, if we accept what we have and stop wanting more, we can achieve happiness in life. And how do you do that? Well, you follow the Eightfold Path. I'm not requiring you to remember any of these guys. You memorize, know that the Four Noble Truths exist, and it's connected to people suffering because we don't have what we want. And the way to escape this suffering is by following this Eightfold Path. Yes?
Isn't number 2 kind of the same as number 1? Suffering happens because we want more,
Sure.
and we're upset because we don't.
Are you telling Buddha that he was being redundant? Okay, fine. I mean, it is what it is. All right?
I read, when I was doing my summer homework, I went online and they had like the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. So it was like so much information.
You will find a lot more.
It was really hard to
Guys,
distinguish what they were trying to actually say.
we are absolutely at the tip of the iceberg, right? This is not a religion class. You guys can study this in college, and you can take you can major in theology and take entire courses on every one of these religions that we're talking about. We are scratching the surface here. Yes?
Was the Global Eightfold Path depicted by like the picture, like the weird?
Yeah.
Right?
Look at your segue there.
What was the fourth?
So-
What was the fourth truth?
What's that? The fourth truth we've got. Follow the Eightfold Path. So the fourth truth is, I'm going to tell you how to get to this point of enlightenment. You need not take pictures of this if people are taking pictures of this, because it's all going to be put on OneNote and my slides and everything. So it's all good. Yeah?
Was this read in a specific order? Like, is one supposed to be like?
I guess it's the order of understanding, the order that you would come to understanding. So the Eightfold Path, think the right way, do the right things, speak in the correct way, act the right way, live the right way, and respect other lives. Focus. We're not going to delve into all of these, but it's the path that one would take in order to achieve that enlightenment. Yes.
That enlightenment, I think, if the translation is not incorrect, I think it's called nirvana.
Yes.
When one, like, after doing all that Eightfold Path, we once get into that path, it's like when you unite with, it's like a heaven in
Very good.
sense, in our
So when you get to the point where you have truly gotten to this place, right, you experience nirvana. right? You have escaped all earthly want, right? You will never want another iPhone. Despite possibly feeling hungry, you will not want more food. You will just be at peace with everything. There will be no desire left in you. Because what makes us miserable as human beings, according to Siddhartha Gautama in Buddhism, what makes us miserable is desire, wanting things that we can't have. So to get beyond that. Now, does that mean everybody's going to be wealthy? Absolutely not. But it is stressing a contentment with what we do have. All right, so there is Buddhism. Now, I'm going to touch really quickly on one important political leader that we will talk more about next week. His name is Ashoka. Ashoka. And he is an emperor in what's known as the Mauryan dynasty. The Mauryan dynasty of classical India. We will talk much more about the Mauryans next week. But Ashoka is an important figure with Buddhism because Ashoka was a Mauryan emperor who will actually convert to Buddhism. He's another one of these like upper caste individuals who converts to Buddhism. He sees Buddhism as a better way for him to live. Now, one second, I'm going to get your question here. And we're going to talk much more about Ashoka next week. But if you were Ashoka and you lived in a Hindu society and you were Hindu, but then you start to like all this Buddhism stuff, are you going to force everybody in your society to embrace Buddhism? No. Why would you not want to force everybody in your society to embrace Buddhism? What's that? They might overthrow you. What does Hinduism do for Indian society?
It regulates it.
It keeps it cool. It regulates it. It keeps a lot of the people that are the poorest people of society living their lives without much protest. So Ashoka is never going to force onto everybody in India Buddhism, which is why today, are there a lot of Buddhists in India? No. Not at all. Not at all. India today is still predominantly Hindu. All right? But he does embrace Buddhism, and he is going to be instrumental in Buddhism spreading to other parts of India and ultimately out of India to Southeast Asia and into East Asia. We'll talk more about Ashoka next week, but he's remembered most with regards to Buddhism for establishing what are known as the Rock and Pillar Edicts. Rock and Pillar Edicts. Rock, some of them literally carved into rocks. Pillars, some of them literally carved into tall pillars. And these are like tenets of Buddhism that the Ashoka-led Mauryan dynasty would sprinkle around the Indian subcontinent. And you can see here on a map where those things would have been sprinkled. We've got rocks and we've got pillars. And they would have tenets of Buddhism and little ideas and little sayings and things people should think about. And these are going to help Buddhism expand within. You guys can see one piece of a pillar that is left today with some inscriptions on it. This says, "Be sure to drink your Ovaltine." I'm kidding. It's a commercial. It's from a movie. Anyway. So the Rock and Pillar Edicts throughout India. Ashoka will also sponsor missionaries, guys that will leave their families to spread Buddhist ideas. And some missionaries will head to the east, some missionaries will head to the west, but the ones that head to the east find a lot of very willing ears. All right? And we will see a spread of Buddhism to Southeast Asia initially, and then into East Asia, into China, where today the largest populations of Buddhists in the world are in Southeast Asia. Okay, questions, comments? Yes?
Did everyone know that Ashoka did this, or was this more of like an undercover type of thing, or was it?
He was the ruler. Everybody knows.
Yeah.
Yeah, not been hit, and certainly not being hidden when he's putting a bunch of rocks and pillars all over the country. Yeah, so this was out in the open. Yes, ma'am. Fair.
Did anybody that was really high up in the caste system, once they found out that Ashoka was Buddhism, start trying to kill him or anything?
No, he was able to keep ruling until he passed. Yeah.
I would just,
And the Mauryan dynasty is going to continue after him, so it didn't destroy the dynasty at all. Yeah.
I would just want to make some points regarding the caste system and Buddhism. We totally because the original Buddha himself rejected
Yes.
the idea of the caste. So when you convert into Buddhism, the caste just disappears, and you will never ever see any circumstances like that in Buddhism.
Right.
And it's also a polytheistic religion. That's why when you see the what you call fat Buddha in Chinese restaurant, that is actually the god for money or wealth.
Yeah.
Wealth. So he would always sit there because people just believe that
It'll be good for business.
Yes, good for business.
Yes, ma'am.
So what's the difference between like the goals of Buddhism and Hinduism?
The goals, I think, are very similar. Ultimately achieving this escape from the world that we live on. But the ways to get to that goal, I think, is where the differences are. In Hinduism, it's going to take many lifetimes, and one is going to have to go through many different castes and have a lot of different obligations to ultimately one day, if they've lived the right life, get to that point. Buddhism, it could happen within one's lifetime. Yes, sir?
Yeah, I think it's the main goal of the two religion is to at the end to be able to unite with all the supreme beings in God as well. So in order to achieve enlightenment or nirvana in that sense is to tie yourself with God, to everybody who is considered a
An
God.
escape from the earthly realm.
If you achieve nirvana, you're considered like a saint or a God in that term. So that's how you unite.
Excellent. And last comment on here before we move on to Confucianism.
If we're talking about Ashoka next week, does that mean they're going to get our test?
Would you not worry about the test? No. This is all this is a journey to your own world history enlightenment. And tests are only like road bumps along the way that the man makes us do to slow us down. Or I do to find out. But please don't worry about it. What do you need to worry about with regard to your test? The standards. Is Ashoka's name on the standards?
Yes.
It is. So yes, you should know. But please don't worry. Let the test happen. Escape from the earthly concerns about grades and points, please. Do you desire good grades?
Yes.
Then you are far from enlightenment.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to sound stupid, but
That's okay. We're going to do that a lot here.
okay. Do monks have anything to do with the Buddhist religion?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. What are they? I don't really know anything.
Tyler, give your 2 cents, and I'll add anything if I feel like I need to.
Yes. Monks is when you completely devote yourself to only in your life to do the Eightfold Path. They're like nuns, but they're males within the or female as well, like female monks within the temple or a pagoda as we call it.
So
And
they're like living the quest for enlightenment.
yes, they would have no other objective, except for living the quest, and they would just follow the eight of them, and they cannot marry as well.
And because you can understand, once one has a child, all of a sudden you're concerned about that child's well-being, and you want good things for that child. Makes it harder for that individual with the child to achieve this, right? And so the monk, they're separated from society, and that is their exclusive focus. Now we're going to deal with like gender relations and things like that. In Christianity, that's the same. There are Christian monks as well, and there are Christian missionaries. A lot of the cases, these are men that are leaving their family and everything, and this is going to have some impact on gender relations and family relations as this goes down in these societies. Yes.
I think this is a really big, general question. But we talked about how jewelry was it brought in
Yeah.
people's ears and stuff. But why is it that in different civilizations jewelry was always so prominent, like in Africa and Middle East and China?
People like the bling. I don't know, it's like shiny. We like shiny things. You got a little baby and you put a shiny thing in front of him, he's gonna be like, I don't know. We're hardwired to dig things that we think look neat. Beyond that, and then they're rare. They're symbols of stature. People wanna wear a Rolex watch because it shows that they've done something, right? Shows that they're different from the people that can't afford that, right? All right. Press on. Before we head off to eat our lunches, we're going to talk about Confucius. We move to China. Now we're kind of veering a little bit away from religion and just starting to talk about a cultural tradition in China. But Confucius to China is every bit as important as, Buddha is going to be to the development of Buddhism and Jesus is going to be to the development of Christianity. Even though Confucius is not a religious leader and Confucianism is not a religion in China. Confucius was a real guy. Just like Siddhartha Gautama was a real guy and Jesus Christ was a real guy. Confucius lived during a time in Chinese history in the 6th century BCE that was known as the era of warring states. We're going to talk about this next week. You don't need to write a lot of detail about the political time. He lived during a ruling family's dynasty called the Zhou dynasty. The Zhou dynasty? Yeah. How do you say it, Alex?
C-H-O-U.
No, how do you say it, though?
Oh.
What's the proper way for me to say that?
You just said it correctly.
Look at me go.
Right.
So the Zhou dynasty.
Yeah, and actually, during his time...
You guys, please quiet, especially because we're recording here, so a lot of talking at the same time doesn't work out very well.
And this is kind of misleading because saying that he lived during the Zhou dynasty isn't very accurate because at the time there was no ruling dynasty.
Well, and this is the point. So he was a bureaucrat within the Zhou. This is before China became China. China's not unified yet. China is the territory that is the China that we know and love today is being duked out by various warlords, by various warlords, landlords, powerful people that control a lot of land and control armies that are fighting against each other. Confucius lives within this state of Zhou, ruled by this Zhou dynasty. But it is not all of China. And there's a lot of chaos, and there's a lot of problems in society. And Confucius is a bureaucrat within this society. Do we know the word bureaucrat? Yeah. We hear that word still today. A bureaucrat is just a government official. All right? And Confucius has some ideas for how the state of Zhou could be better ruled. All right? And he starts talking about those ideas. And eventually his ideas get written down by his followers. And they get written down and they become what are known as the Analects of Confucius. The Analects. In a couple days we're going to look at some of these Analects of Confucius. But his ideas were never embraced or adopted during his own life. It's only going to be centuries later that they will be actually adopted by a ruling Chinese dynasty and then start to shape Chinese culture forevermore. Yeah?
I was going to add to that what you just
Please.
said, that his philosophy was almost destroyed when the Qin dynasty came to power.
Yes, and we will absolutely cover that, probably getting into next week. So Confucius was all about creating a system that would lead to greater order in society. And to come to that greater order in society, Confucius developed what are known as the 5 relationships. And that if every aspect of society or every individual within these relationships did the things that they were supposed to do within those relationships, was a good ruler, was a good father, was a good husband, was a good elder brother, and was a good subject, was a good son, was a good wife, and was a good younger brother, and were good friends, that society would be a good society. Kind of rings a little bit to me like Hinduism, in that everybody has a role in society within their caste, right? These are the connections that I would love for you guys to try to make within your notes as you're reading. When you hear things that are similar or maybe starkly different than something else, I want you to address them. Just one moment, please. So within Confucianism and these relationships, Confucius is establishing hierarchy within society, a ranking within society. All right? But not just within society, but also within the household. And within each one of these relationships, there is a dominant. The ruler rules over the subjects. The father lords over his son. the husband, this is a patriarchal society, the husband takes precedent over the wife, the elder brother over the younger brother. But within Confucian ideology, all of these people must be benevolent. They must be good. They must do the right thing. They shouldn't be abusive. On the flip side, the subject should follow the rules of the ruler. The son should listen to his father. This is called filial piety. We're going to talk about this next class. The wife should be subservient and obedient to her husband. The younger brother to his elder brother. This friend-to-friend relationship, this is the only parallel relationship within Confucianism, all right, where each side is giving and taking the same. So if a society is established like this, if a household is established like this, there will be order in society. And that's what Confucianism is about, establishing order in society. One comment, and then we're going to head off to lunch.
A quick comment that I kind of see this very relatable to the southeast part of the Asian continent where I come from, and especially countries like Korea or Japan, Vietnam, all those countries.
Yes.
Even though we have like sort of different religions, Buddhism, we have the same Confucius belief that son listens to his father very
Absolutely.
And total obedience to the system and all.
And as you well know, China, with its Confucianism, is absolutely going to influence East Asia, especially Korea, Japan to some lesser extent, and Southeast Asia, absolutely. So we will talk about that this year as well.